Welcome everyone. This is the first edition of the private live stream on the Beato Club. And I'm trying my camera set up a little bit differently so that you guys can see. Are you guys can you guys comment so that you can I can see that you can actually see the stream here? Those of you that are on. You guys got me here? You can hear my guitar? Everybody can hear that? All good? I want to talk today. I haven't done that many videos on unusual resolutions. There's a couple in particular that that you can use in all types of composing, but are really odd when it comes to improvising over. And they're in a couple jazz tunes. It's specifically in Brazilian music, Antonio Carlos Jobim. These are the first things I want to talk about, is a diminished seventh chord resolving down to a minor seventh chord, down by half step. Now, two songs that they happen to work in, I want to talk about the theory about why they work and how to improvise over them. One of the tunes is How Insensitive. So if you take the chord progression from the beginning, right here. So I've gone from C sharp diminished seventh to C minor seventh, okay? So D minor 7, C sharp diminished seventh to C minor seventh. There's also another tune that he uses a similar thing. It's a tune called Wave. Right there, B flat diminished seventh to A minor 7. So the D major 7, B flat diminished seventh going to A minor 7. Now, these were always difficult for my students to improvise over, and I think when I first started learning to improvise over, jazz tunes and more difficult chord progressions, these were tricky. It was hard to navigate, to know what to play over them, because I really couldn't conceptualize where those resolutions were coming from. So if you take a C sharp diminished 7 and we relate it to D minor 7 and How Insensitive. Okay, this can easily be analyzed as, if I put an A in the bass, would be an A7 flat 9. So it's essentially going from the 1 chord, the minor 1, to the 5 chord, down to the flat 7 minor chord. Okay, so it's actually a modulation. There's no question about it. But if I think of it as if it were a 5-1 cadence, right? Or 1-5, 1. There's my scale. Another thing, though, is that you can think of it being from the D harmonic minor scale and think of it as being a Phrygian major sound, okay? Okay, that actually, right? You can hear that sound over there. That's that sound, right? So I can really hear that, but that's where that resolution comes in. I'm going to that C minor 11. There's two good notes that you can resolve to. The flat 7 and the 11 there are good. So, or So that, knowing those target notes, the 11 and the flat 7, those are great because in this diminished scale we have this note, we have the F sharp, and that brings us down to that 11th on the C minor. So, or it can, there are two chromatic notes that are a half step away from one of the chord tone or one of the notes of the C Dorian, which you could play on here. That surround, that are from the C sharp diminished scale, or here you have the half step motion going from the A, right, which is, if you think about, you get C sharp, E, the A there is not one of the chord tones of the C sharp diminished, but it is the root of the A7 chord, okay? Same thing with playing over wave. It's the same progression. So you got, then I go, so I've got, that's where my A minor 7. Same thing. You're going to find those half step. Or okay, so half step down, diminished 7th resolution. The chords are not related in the same way, though. This D major 7 to B flat diminished 7th is not related in this same way, but it is. Okay, if you think about this, you have your one chord on D major 7 in wave, right, and it goes to B flat diminished 7th. But what if I went like this? That sounds kind of exactly like it, because B flat diminished 7th is C sharp diminished 7th, and D major 7 is a relative major, parallel major, not the relative major, the parallel major of D minor 7, right? The only difference is that this is resolving here and this is resolving there. It's a really interesting. And you have to intellectualize this in a different way in order to improvise over it. But the other thing is, typically you have, and I have this in the Beato book, typically you have secondary diminished 7th chords that resolve up. So it would be common to resolve up to a, let's say if I were going to, I could go. Now that's very common to have a half step up resolution of a diminished 7th chord, but a half step down is uncommon. So that's one of these uncommon resolutions that that you're faced with in certain tunes, especially Jobim tunes in particular, that are difficult to improvise over, and you have to find strategies to do that. But one of the strategies, and how insensitive, is to treat it like it's a Phrygian major, or that it's out of the same harmonic minor scale as the tonic chord. So if we're in D minor, so I play D minor, you hear the change. You can really hear that when I'm playing it. 1. Here's the change. And I'm on the 11th. Now, How Insensitive has another odd resolution here. This tune it's interesting because Matheny loves to play over this tune. A lot of people love How Insensitive. That's why there's so many versions on jazz records of it, because it's got some challenging progressions. Now this goes from C minor 7 next to B minor 7 flat 5, okay? B minor 7 flat 5 can also be substituted. A lot of times you'll see people will play we'll play a G over B, or G at 9 over B, or a B minor 7 flat 6, and you'll hear, you know, you can treat it like a G major chord, or you can really actually just outline it as a B minor 7 flat 5. Now, is there a logic to it? Well, it sounds great with the melody, but it's very difficult to wrap your head around that resolution, because once again, this is a very odd resolution. This happens all through this tune. The next chord in the song, though, is going to B flat major 7. That's a very common movement that you would hear. You hear it in turnarounds and intros, you know. That is very common, having half diminished chord moving like that. As a matter of fact, a great turnaround on the intro to How Insensitive for improvising, you go, let's see. Or you can think of, you know, that is very, very, very common, because they share that D minor triad there. So that's not that weird. But the first 4 bars of How Insensitive are very, very unusual to improvise over. So that's one of the things. I've not talked about that much, even though that's in the Beato book. And those tunes are particularly difficult to solo over, I think, for most people. There's also one other spot in Wave that's very hard. That is here. I mean, I would play it like this. Now, a lot of people so I'm playing C sharp minor 7. You could play C sharp minor 7. A lot of people will play C sharp minor 7, F sharp 7, F sharp minor 7, B7 to E7. That's kind of a common thing. I think voice leading wise, I like to use a tritone substitute there. So C sharp minor 11, C7 flat 5, B flat or B7 sus 4 to B7 augmented. I think that sounds way, way cooler. But improvising it over is still tricky. You have to know the chord scales for here, right? And then. And then. So I'm thinking over each individual chord when I'm improvising. But that's using a tritone substitute, or and right there is an odd turnaround in the tune where you're going another tritone substitute, but not used in the same way. So those two Jobim tunes are tunes that you should really take a look at, not only from an improvising point of view, but I think that there's a lot of interesting, if you're a film composer, I think there's a lot of understanding these particular types of chord movements are really, I think can really be used. You don't see them very often used in this way in these two particular tunes, and Jobim had a great way of doing that. I think of having an ear for these kind of chord progressions, and I would really encourage you to check out his music, to go through, maybe try out the record A Certain Mr. Jobim, which is a record that has Klaus Ogerman string arrangements on it. It's a Frank Sinatra record. There's a couple Sinatra sings Jobim. There's a couple Sinatra records which have Jobim tunes on them that are just amazing. And like I said, you'll hear people like Matheny has been playing over How Insensitive for 40 years. And I saw a thing on here that Mick Goodrick and Matheny playing How Insensitive is amazing. But there's so many versions of him playing on this. And one of the reasons is that this is a great chord progression. Now, he has a song that's called Are You Going With Me, a Pat Metheny tune that, to me, really borrows a lot of the chord progression from some of the movements from How Insensitive. He likes playing over the song so much that he took some of those movements, and he's great at playing over it, too. He knows kind of how to... what to do with those things. There's another thing you can do in this particular thing. You can treat that second chord in How Insensitive. If you think of the... You can treat that as a first inversion A major chord, or a C minor 7 with a sharp 5, or you want to call it B chordal over C sharp, not C minor 7, C sharp, I mean. So, that sounds really cool. I think it's modern sounding, it's really beautiful, and you'll play different stuff over it if you're... Or I'm playing that harmonic minor or that Phrygian major sound over it too. But you can actually use that natural that B natural on it, or B flat. I think that's another really cool. And then on the instead of the B diminished chord, making it a B minor 7 with a sharp 5. So that the way the progression would be this. think that's a really cool substitution to do over this particular progression. Okay, comments here. What do we got? You didn't realize that wave is a blues for years. I didn't realize wave was a blues until I've never realized that wave was a blues. Does wave go to the 4 chord in the 5th bar? 2, 3, 4. It goes to the 4 chord in the 5th bar. But it's not really a blues because it goes to it doesn't go to a dominant chord in the 5th bar. It doesn't sound like a blues. But theoretically, anything that goes to the 4 chord in the 5th bar would be considered a blues. So you could really kind of say it could be a blues. Wave is your favorite tune by Jobim. Well, it was my dad's favorite tune by Jobim too. Any record that had Wave on it, my dad would buy. There's some really great Klaus Ogerman arrangements. There's a version of Oscar Peterson playing Wave that's on a record called Motions and Emotions. I'm not sure that it's out on, it's probably not on Spotify or Apple Music. I don't know if I've seen it. I own the record. You can find it on YouTube though. There's definitely, somebody put it on YouTube and it's really great. But what happens in that tune is that there's a long vamp at the end. Oscar solos over the tune, but then at the end, he solos over dominant sus chords and minor 7th chords over long, a few bars at a time and plays amazing, amazing lines. That is I think that's something to really sit down and woodshed. That would be something to transcribe. I transcribed a lot of his lines. I started, and some of those lines when I was learning bebop and playing on the piano, when he's, oh boy, can't get this working here. He uses a lot of that double chromatic approach. If you're playing, let's say you're playing over a D minor 7 chord, right? That's a whole, but that. He's using, with the D minor, he's playing. There's your A minor, but he's using the D sharp, C sharp to surround the D. That's the double chromatic principle, and surrounding that F. Surrounding that F is and surrounding the tonic. When I first learned that, I learned it actually from that Oscar Peterson solo. When I started transcribing it on the guitar, and then I transcribed it on the piano. And a lot of great things to be gleaned from that. Also, the orchestration is incredibly good on it. Okay, any other questions here? What do we got here? I haven't really figured out the format here because we don't have a lot of people that are asking questions on here. So some of the other, let's talk about a couple other unusual resolutions. Some of the more standard resolutions that you can have, substitutions for the tonic chord, for example. If I'm going to do... this would be a thing you don't find as much. You find it more people like Keith Jarrett Matheny that'll use the major 7 sharp 5 to 6 sound. or let's say I'm so what I'm doing here, I'm doing E minor 9 to A11 to A7, A9 flat 5, then I'm going to D major 7 sharp 5 to D major 6. That is a really great resolution. And when you're soloing over then right this sharp 5 to 6 is a very cool resolution. A lot of people, I mean, this was modern 30 years ago. It's not really modern now, but you still don't hear people use that very often. I don't know why. You know. But you have to get the voice leading right. Right? So I did E minor 7 there to A7 sharp 5 sharp 9 to D major 7 sharp 5 to D major 13. Once again, that is that's a movement that is, I think, underutilized in jazz, and can be used in film scoring as well. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. What would you play over G minor sharp 5 over A chord? I'm not sure what G minor sharp 5. Oh, G minor with a sharp 5? You mean like a G minor 7 with a sharp 5 over A, like that? A G minor, you're saying G minor sharp 5, yeah. Be a sound like that, the one I just played. Yeah, that would be an altered dominant. That's a great sound. Right there is your sound. So I've got F major triad. You can use triad pairs, F major, E flat major. So that's another thing you can play. You play A altered dominant, or you can play triad pairs, F major, E flat major. You can play E Lydian triad over it. I mean, there's many different things you can play. You play anything basically out of A altered dominant. Isn't that just an E flat inversion with an A? It could be an E flat triad in inversion, E flat major triad, right? Yeah, I mean, that's it. If you got E flat, right? So I've got E, so it's like A over E flat, right? You can do the same, that's what it is basically, but it's still coming out of the, altered dominant scale, so. But it could be an inverted Lydian sound as well with the sharp 4 in the bass, but that starts to get confusing. It's easier just to think of the A as the tonic of the chord, as the root of the chord, and just figuring out what scale to play over it. When you start trying to think, making things too complex, you have no facility with them. Always, I'm going to be doing a video on Pat Martino's approach to giant steps, where he makes all the dominant chords just minor chords instead of going, B major 7, D7, G major 7, B flat 7, E flat 7. He thinks B major 7, A minor 7 to G major 7, because he's very used to thinking minor 7 instead of dominant, right? So, and then you get that. That way you've got, then you have just descending, your bass line's moving down in the whole tone scale, right? B major 7, A minor 7, G major 7, F minor 7, E flat major 7. Then you get 2, 5. But interesting approach, and it's interesting to think differently like that. Some people's brains just work like that. They just, when they see a dominant chord, if he sees D7, he's thinking A minor 7, because that's just kind of how he's always done it. And a lot of jazz players like to think that. They'll like to take away some of the chords to make it easier to play on and kind of stretch out, where you're not bound by thinking about, you end up playing more horizontally than vertically, but you still make the changes. He still knows how to turn the notes around in the right spot. That's really important. Cry Me a River by Julian, especially the intro. I don't know the intro of that. Let's see here. Paul, context. Yeah, the context is on these things is really important. Like this A chord here. If it's functioning as a 5 chord, right? Then you should think of it as a 5 chord instead of saying, oh, it's an inverted E flat chord. No, it's just an A altered sound. It's just one voicing from that. That's Barney Kessel. I'm not sure what's Barney Kessel. What are you talking about? You talking about Barney Kessel playing that? Any questions about this? I did it off the G over A. The one I just played, I did it off G over A. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, as far as major 7 sharp 5 chords, it's interesting. Back in the 70s, a lot of people played them in a lot of tunes. There's a tune Choral by, is that a Jarrett tune? That has a B flat major 7 sharp 5, or if you think of Matheny. And then in the bridge, it's he goes to E to C major 7, E major 9 to C major 7 sharp 5. That's a great sound. It's nice because it's C natural. Is a great Love that sound. That's a great resolution in that tune. You don't find those that much anymore. I mean, those are sounds that you know, I love those major 7 sharp 5 chords. I'm using it there. There's just a great. I used to hear A, B flat over A to A flat leading augmented, or C over A flat to D flat over G, right? To B leading augmented, to E over D sharp, to D leading augmented or F sharp major over D, to G over C sharp. This is really complex stuff. So I'm using this pattern is based off 4 major 7 sharp 5 chords that are a minor third apart, right? Listen. Hold on. So I did. There it is. There it is. There's a third one. Fourth one. It's a great, great sound. 70s ECM progressions forever. Exactly. They're all over. That's all over ECM. All over ECM tunes. Could also be a flat 9 without the 7th. Again, being an inversion. I'm not sure what you mean by that. It could also be a flat 9 with the 7th. Are you back to talking about diminished chords, Paul? Yeah, the diminished chords are tough. It's really tough to learn how to think over those. Guitar is really difficult because it depends on it really kind of depends on the resolution. You kind of have to learn where these things lie on the guitar with each other. You know, if I'm thinking of wave and I'm playing on D major 7, right? And then I think I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna make D, right? And then there's my B flat. So I've got so here's my D, and then I think, where is my so I said D, and I know that C sharp diminished chord is the same as the B flat is a half step away from the D, so I'm playing over wave right there. You can hear where those chords are changing, but I know that A goes to B flat. I know that D goes to C sharp. I know where those resolution tones are that are a half step away from the chord tones that I'm on. That's from really knowing really experimenting and figuring out where every possible resolution tone is from one scale to the next. If I'm on D major, right? So I'm here. If I'm on the F sharp, I know I can go there a half step. Right? If I'm on the fifth of the D major chord, I can go. If I'm on the root, if I'm on the sixth, which I probably wouldn't be, but I know where every note in the scale is in relation to the next note that's a chord tone of the diminished seventh chord that's following it. Choral has, yeah, that's a tune, choral. A, G, B flat, D sharp. No. Well, that's really just E flat over A. Wait. A, G, B flat, D sharp, which would be G flat, E flat major over A. Dominant 7, flat 9, flat 5. That's a great sound. Great dominant 7. So anyway, so these are some unusual resolutions to work out over, I think. Yeah, the major 7 sharp 5 chords as your substitute for your tonic chord, and the last one I would say would be to that's also in Jobim tunes is the tonic diminished to it's 1 diminished 7th to 1 major 7th, because that's in so many tunes too. Where Miles, everybody uses it, but that would be like in that'd be, or if I went to, like so that's a 1 diminished 7th, and it works in the same way, right? So you can hear that diminished 7th chord there when I so let's see. That's a great sound, going to the tonic diminished chord, adding that chord in before you go to the 1 chord on a 2-5-1. Once again, you find it in Jobim. You find it all the time. It's really, really common. The other version of it would be to do the could be it's from the same scale, but that would be A major over B flat. So I'm using what I call a tonic diminished 1 chord resolving to 1, but this it's a little bit more modern of a sound, using A major over B flat. It's still from the same scale though, right? It's got so one's a little bit more modern sound than the other, but both really great sounds. A piano keyboard translation would be nice. Well, I'd have to set up a camera to do that, to show it on the keyboard, which I really am not set up to do here. But what you really need to do is you need to just write down these things, because that's all I would do. Is I would notate the chords, I'd write them down, and I'd say, okay, what notes are a half step away, and I'd find where all those resolution, what those resolution tones. You know, I can set it up for, next one I do, I'm going to set it up for 2 cameras here, where I have a downward camera where I can write on staff paper. For this streaming here, we're going to figure out how I can use my, how I can actually film it in the other room, so I got my whiteboard behind me. And I can do that. Or if I use 2 cameras in here, I can actually have note paper and just write on it. And I can switch in here from there and write down the things. So anyways, leave me comments about things you'd like to see me talk about in here. I wanted to talk about this today. I'm thinking a lot about it for my last video that I did. I don't know how many of you watched my little lesson where... yes, this does, Monty, does handle 2 camera modes. Notation, yeah, I'll have it set up for notation next time. I can do a downward. I have a tripod that looks down, actually, and I can set up a second camera for it. I had it set up, but then it didn't work again because it was hard to read. Or I can move in my whiteboard in here and just do it behind me. That's just as easy to do that. But yeah, those half-step resolutions, looking for those, that's the most important thing to with any of this stuff, is to find where all those are and just map them out. The keyboard is easy because you can see them and they don't change from octave to octave. The guitar is tough because they change from octave to octave. So so in some ways the keyboard is easier to do it, but leave in your comments if you have any questions about this. I'm curious how many of you watched my second little lesson that I did where I talked about the resolutions, those modal resolutions that I did for my last video, because I thought that was something that I could have explained in the video. I was talking to Aaron about it, and we talked about, he thought I was going to go to different places in it, which is really interesting to see, different people hear things different ways. And so I wanted to show some possibilities of where to go. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, it came out it's on your, and if you that are watching this now, it's archived, all of them. It's on Flat 5. So look in your, those of you that get the private lessons like that, the additional material, you can go watch those. I've done 2 of them so far, where I talked about one. The first one was about one of the Instagram videos I had just done. The next one was about the video I just put out the day before yesterday. Anyways, that's it for now. I've got a video I'm going to be putting out in the next hour. So so look out for that, and leave your questions here in the comment thread. All right? You guys are awesome. Appreciate it.